Adrian Vale didn't notice the crying first. He noticed the hesitation. A nurse's hands paused, barely a flicker of time, above two newborns who looked so identical that the universe itself seemed to be holding its breath. And Adrian's eyes went straight to the corner of the private maternity suite, where a small black dome watched everything without blinking. Because that camera wasn't the hospital's. It was his. But what he didn't know was that the camera had already seen the only thing money couldn't erase. And then she said it, so softly it almost hid inside the hum of machines. Switch them. Adrian stepped forward like the words had yanked him by the throat. What did you just say? The nurse turned too quickly, her face rearranging itself into calm. Sir, I said I need to swaddle them. Protocol. But her eyes slid to the bassinets, and her fingers tightened around a wristband, as if it mattered more than the baby's cry. Celeste lay pale on the bed, exhausted, blissful, still half floating in the haze of labor and medication. Adrian, she whispered, are they okay? Are our boys okay? Adrian didn't answer. He couldn't, because the nurse was moving. One blanket lifted, a wristband peeled, another pressed down. A bassinet nudged just slightly. It wasn't dramatic. It was clean. It was quick. It was the kind of motion that could be explained away later, if no one had been watching closely enough. Adrian's pulse hammered. Stop, he said, and the room seemed to freeze around his voice. The nurse held still, smiling too politely. Sir, you're overwhelmed. This is normal. Adrian's gaze snapped to the dark TV screen across the room, and in that glassy reflection he saw something that made his blood turn cold. A second figure. A shadow behind the nurse, half hidden by the angle and the bright lights. Someone else was in the room, moving like they belonged there. Adrian took a step toward the door, but his phone vibrated hard in his hand, as if the device itself was warning him not to move. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. A woman's voice whispered, low and urgent, If you want your sons to live, you'll blame the maid. The line went dead. Adrian stood frozen. He could still hear the baby's cries, but now they sounded less like newborn hunger and more like alarms. The nurse's smile stayed in place as if nothing had happened. Sir, she said gently, do you want to hold your baby? Adrian stared at the two swaddled bodies and felt something unfamiliar twist inside his chest. Not joy. Fear. Which one? He asked, and the question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. 2 days earlier, Adrian Vale hadn't believed in mercy. He believed in contracts. In control. In the kind of wealth that made people apologize before you even spoke. He'd built Vale Technologies on the cold truth that people behaved differently when they thought they were being watched. Cameras were his language. Data was his religion. Certainty was his addiction. And yet, for all his systems, there had always been one place he couldn't secure. His own home. The mansion on Crestview Hill wasn't just a house. It was a stage with marble floors and glass walls, where his wife Celeste played the role of perfection so well that even her sadness looked expensive, and inside that palace were the people no one truly saw. The drivers, the cooks, the cleaners, and the maid. Her name was Marisol Reyes, 26. Quiet, careful, slim in the way that suggested life had made her stretch every meal, every paycheck, every hope. Her hair was always pulled back in a simple bun. Her uniform was always spotless, like she was trying to prove she belonged in a world that never planned to welcome her. Most days, Adrian barely noticed her, until the day Celeste's pregnancy turned dangerous. It began with a sharp pain and a scream that shattered the mansion's polished silence. Celeste collapsed in the marble hallway, one hand clutching her belly, the other clawing at the air like she was trying to grab onto life itself. Marisol was the one who found her. Marisol was the one who knelt beside her, checked her breathing, called the ambulance, and spoke to Celeste in a soft stream of Spanish that sounded like prayer. When Adrian rushed down the stairs, his suit jacket half on, his face hard with panic he didn't want anyone to see, his eyes landed on Marisol. Not with gratitude, with suspicion. Because Marisol was holding something in her hand, something metallic, something small and old. Adrian's voice snapped. "What is that?" Marisol flinched. "Sir, I found it near her. It fell when she fell." "What is it?" he repeated, colder. Marisol opened her palm. A thin silver necklace, worn smooth with age, holding a tiny oval locket. It didn't belong in Celeste's world. Celeste wore diamonds the size of promises. This was cheap. This was sentimental. This was something someone wore under their clothes, close to their skin. Adrian took it from Marisol's hand. The metal was warm. He flipped it over. An engraving, faint but readable. To see always. A. His throat tight because his name started with A. Because he had never given Celeste something like that. Because he had once known a woman whose name started with C, and he had once been young enough to believe a locket could hold a life together. Marisol watched him as if she was watching a door in his mind crack open. "Personal things don't matter right now," Adrian said, harshly, trying to bury the tremor in his own voice. "She needs a hospital." The ambulance arrived. Sirens cut through the air. Paramedics lifted Celeste onto a stretcher, and as they rolled her out, Marisol's eyes stayed locked on Celeste's belly with a look that didn't belong to a maid's job description. It looked like grief, like fear, like ownership. Adrian noticed, and the noticing settled in him like a seed. At the hospital, the doctors moved fast. Words flew like blades. High blood pressure, risk of abruption, emergency monitoring. Twins. 2 boys. Adrian sat in the private waiting room with his hands clenched together, watching a live camera feed on his phone. Not the hospital's cameras. His own. A private device he'd had installed in Celeste's suite without anyone's permission. Because Adrian trusted cameras more than people. Celeste's aunt, Evelyn Harrow, swept into the waiting room like a queen arriving to claim what she believed belonged to her. Evelyn was elegance sharpened into cruelty. She kissed Celeste's forehead with theatrical tenderness, then turned to Adrian with eyes that never warmed. "This is what happens," Evelyn said, "when stress is allowed into a pregnancy." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Stress doesn't come from nowhere." Evelyn's gaze sharpened. "Are you implying my family?" "I'm implying," Adrian cut in, "that someone doesn't want these babies born safely." Evelyn smiled slowly, patronizing. "You see enemies everywhere, Adrian. Perhaps that's why you're successful. But you can't accuse shadows." Adrian's phone buzzed with a message from Grant, his head of security. "Camera in suite installed, and live. No blind spots." Adrian stared at the words and felt a bitter laugh press against his teeth. There were always blind spots. Blind spots were where disasters lived. He looked through the glass wall into Celeste's suite. Marisol stood in the corner, holding Celeste's hand, murmuring softly in Spanish. Evelyn followed his gaze, and her mouth tightened. "That maid is far too attached," Evelyn said. "It's inappropriate." Adrian didn't respond. He couldn't shake the memory of Marisol gripping the locket, the way her fingers had curled around it like it belonged to her too. 6 months, he thought. Marisol had been in the mansion for 6 months. Celeste had been pregnant for 6 months. And suddenly, every coincidence felt sharp enough to cut. When the nurse came in and said, "Mr. Vale, Mrs. Vale's labor is progressing faster than expected," Adrian rose with his pulse pounding. Evelyn touched his arm. "In families like ours, reputation is survival." Adrian nodded, but his mind wasn't on reputation. It was on the idea that someone was about to take something from him. And Adrian Vale didn't lose what was his. Labor hit like a storm. Doctors and nurses filled the suite. Machines beeped. Celeste cried out, gripping the sheets, her face contorted in fear and pain. Adrian stood at her head, holding her hand, whispering, "You're safe. I'm here." But his eyes were scanning everyone else, and one nurse in particular held his attention. Tessa Baird, tall, efficient, movements too smooth to be merely professional, a calm smile that didn't reach her eyes. Adrian watched her check the IV lines, adjust monitors, lift blankets, handle wristbands, and every time she moved, Adrian's suspicion tightened its grip. "Baby A is crowning," the doctor announced. Celeste screamed. Minutes stretched like hours, and then a furious cry tore through the room. A boy. Adrian's chest heaved. Relief slammed into him. A nurse carried the baby to the warming station. Checks. Vitals. Swaddling. Adrian looked down at his phone where his camera feed captured every angle. He watched Tessa step toward the wristbands. 1 band. 2 bands. Her fingers hovered. She glanced toward the door, and right then, as if summoned by her look, the door clicked open. A staff member slipped in, pushing a tray, head down, masked, cap low. Not a doctor, not a nurse, Adrian recognized. The person paused, just long enough to make Adrian's skin prickle. And in that pause, Tessa shifted her body, blocking the camera's view for 1 crucial second. 1 second. That was all it took. The doctor announced, "Baby B is coming." Another cry. Another boy. Celeste sobbed with relief. Adrian should have been overwhelmed with joy. Instead, he felt the room sharpen around him, as if the air itself had become suspicious. Tessa brought the first baby to Celeste. Celeste kissed his forehead, whispering a name through tears. Lucien. Then Tessa brought the second baby. But she hesitated, just slightly. "Let me adjust his blanket," Tessa said. Her fingers slid beneath the wristband. Adrian's voice went low. "What are you doing?" Tessa smiled politely. "Just securing it. Sometimes the adhesive." "Stop," Adrian said. Tessa's smile faltered for half a breath. In that same moment, a nurse leaned into the doorway. "Mrs. Vale? Excuse me. There's someone here to see you. She says she's family." Evelyn stiffened. "Family? Who?" The nurse blinked. "A woman named Marisol Reyes." Adrian's head snapped toward the hall. Marisol stood there wringing her hands, eyes wide with worry. She looked too small in that bright corridor, like she didn't belong anywhere near this kind of wealth, this kind of birth, this kind of secret. "Sir," she whispered, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be here, but they said I could bring this." She held out a small cloth pouch. Adrian's gaze locked onto it. "Why are you here?" he demanded. Marisol swallowed. "A nurse told me Mrs. Vale needed me. She said bring the pouch, bring the photo." She said it was important. Behind Adrian, Tessa appeared in the doorway, and her face tightened when she saw Marisol. For the first time, Nurse Baird looked afraid. Adrian took the pouch, his pulse hammering. "Wait there," he ordered Marisol. "Don't move." Marisol nodded quickly, obedient, but her eyes flicked toward the suite, toward the babies, with an ache that looked almost maternal. Adrian stepped back inside. Celeste was weak and blissful, holding one baby. Her eyes were closed, her mouth curved in a tired smile. She looked like she believed the world was safe now, because the worst pain was over. Adrian opened the cloth pouch. Inside was an old photograph, creased, worn and handled too many times to be a casual keepsake. A younger woman held a newborn. Her face was partly shadowed, but her eyes were unmistakable. Celeste's eyes. and beside her stood a young man who looked like Adrian. Too much like Adrian. In the corner of the photo, taped half loose, was a hospital bracelet with a date Adrian couldn't breathe through, a date from years ago. A night Adrian had blacked out and never spoke of again. A night his memory contained like a wound. Adrian's stomach turned. He looked up at Marisol standing in the hall, and Marisol whispered, barely audible, "One of them isn't hers." Adrian's mouth went dry. "What did you say?" Marisol's eyes shone with tears. "The babies. One of them doesn't belong to her." Adrian felt the room tilt. Celeste stirred, murmuring, "Adrian, let me see them." Evelyn sat near the bed like a guardian angel painted over a predator, watching, listening, calculating. Adrian's phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he answered, voice clipped. "Who is this?" A woman whispered, "You think you're watching the truth. You're watching what we let you see." Adrian's gaze swept the room. No one reacted. No one but Tessa. Because Tessa's eyes flicked, for the briefest moment, toward the ceiling camera, as if she knew exactly where it was, as if she'd planned around it. Adrian's pulse surged. He stepped into the hallway and grabbed Grant's arm. "Lock down this floor. No one leaves. Check every badge. Find out who that masked staff member was." Grant's eyes widened. "Sir, hospital protocol. I don't care," Adrian said. "Do it." He went back inside, his mind racing. The babies lay swaddled, 2 tiny lives, 2 identical faces, 2 wristbands. And suddenly, Adrian realized the most terrifying part. He didn't know which one was which. Hours passed, thick with tension. Celeste dozed, exhausted, waking whenever a baby cried. Evelyn hovered, sweet on the surface and sharp underneath. Nurses moved in and out. But now Adrian saw every movement as a possible deception. Grant returned with a grim face. "Sir, we checked the staff logs. That masked person is not recorded anywhere." Adrian's jaw clenched. "So someone walked into my wife's suite during delivery without a record?" Grant nodded. "Yes, sir." Adrian's eyes hardened. Then this wasn't a mistake. It was an operation. Adrian stormed toward the nursery wing, demanding to see both babies under official observation. He found them side by side behind glass, identical, tiny, innocent. Relief hit him for a moment, and then he noticed one wristband looked freshly printed. Darker ink, newer adhesive. His stomach dropped. He turned to the nurse on duty. "Where is Nurse Baird?" The nurse hesitated. She was called to pediatrics transfer paperwork. Adrian's blood went cold. "Transfer. Standard observation," the nurse said quickly. Adrian didn't believe her. His phone buzzed again. "Unknown number," he answered, voice shaking with rage. "What do you want?" The whisper returned. "You're too late." Adrian's chest tightened. "Where is she?" A soft laugh. "The maid? She's exactly where we need her, waiting to be blamed." Adrian spun. At the end of the hallway, Marisol stood with 2 hospital security guards gripping her arms. A nurse shouted. She was in the nursery without authorization. Marisol shook her head frantically. "No, I wasn't. I swear." Evelyn appeared beside Adrian, her voice calm, satisfied. "Call the police," she said loudly. "This is kidnapping. Endangerment." Marisol's face drained of color. "Please, no." Adrian stared at Marisol, then at Evelyn, then at the camera footage in his phone, then at the bracelet he'd glimpsed in the clip, and he understood in a sick flash. They were trying to make him hate the wrong woman. He stepped toward Marisol. "Who told you to come here?" Marisol trembled. "A nurse. She said Mrs. Vale needed me. She said bring the pouch." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Did you see her?" Marisol nodded. "Tall, blonde." "Badge," said Tessa. Adrian's gaze snapped to Evelyn. Evelyn's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered. Adrian raised a hand. "Release her." The guards hesitated. Adrian's voice sharpened. Now, they released Marisol. Evelyn's voice snapped. "Adrian, she's a suspect." Adrian didn't look away from Evelyn. "No, she's bait." That night, Celeste slept under medication. Adrian sat alone with the locket and the photo, replaying footage again and again. He enhanced the frames, hunted for reflections, studied angles like a man trying to catch a lie in the act of breathing. In one reflection, he saw a second set of hands near the wristbands, manicured nails, an emerald ring, hands he had seen at every family gathering, Evelyn Harrow's hands. His breath caught. He watched the reflection again. Evelyn lifting one baby, Tessa lifting the other, wristbands sliding, blankets shifting. A swap. A deliberate swap. Adrian's pulse pounded as he paused the video on the frame where Evelyn's face flickered into view. He wasn't looking at a nurse's mistake. He was looking at a family betrayal. Grant arrived with a tablet and a still image from the hospital hallway camera. Tessa was leaving through a service exit. Beside her walked Evelyn. And Evelyn was holding a swaddled bundle. Adrian's blood turned to ice. Which baby was that? Grant swallowed. "We don't know, sir. Nursery staff insists both twins are still there." Adrian rushed to the nursery again, demanded both babies brought out, laid them side by side, stared at their faces until his eyes burned. He wanted certainty. But identical babies were designed by nature to defeat certainty. Adrian turned to Grant. "We used the one thing they didn't account for." Grant frowned. "What?" Adrian held up his phone. "I didn't install one camera." He switched to the second angle, the hidden one, and rewound. The blocked second from the main camera didn't matter anymore. The hidden angle caught the reflection in a cabinet door. It caught Evelyn's ring. It caught the swap. It caught the truth. Adrian stared at it until the truth turned from shocking into undeniable. Then he called for Marisol. When Marisol returned, Adrian held up the locket. "Do you recognize this?" Marisol's face changed. Her voice went small. "Where did you get that?" "Answer," Adrian said. Marisol swallowed. "My mother had one like it." Adrian's heart hammered. "What was her name?" Marisol hesitated like the name was a doorway she'd avoided for years. Then she whispered, "Camilla." Adrian froze. Camilla Reyes, a waitress from the past. Kind eyes, warm laugh, a love Adrian buried under ambition and fear. Adrian's voice shook. "Camilla Reyes was your mother?" Marisol nodded, tears spilling. "Yes." Adrian's mouth went dry. "Why did you come work for my family?" Marisol's shoulders trembled. "The agency placed me. I didn't know it was you until I saw the name. I wanted to know what happened to my mother. She used to cry at night holding that locket. She used to say, 'He doesn't know. He never knew.'" Adrian's throat tightened. "Know what?" Marisol looked at the babies, then at Adrian, and her voice cracked open. "She was pregnant when you left." Adrian's world went silent. He stared at Marisol like she was holding a mirror to the part of his life he'd never dared to look at. Celeste, half awake, murmured from the bed, "Adrian, what's going on?" Adrian didn't answer her yet, because his phone buzzed again with an unknown number, and this time the whisper wasn't a threat. It was a promise. "Good," the voice said. "Now you'll doubt her forever." The line went dead. Adrian stood still, locket heavy in his pocket, babies crying softly, Marisol trembling, Celeste breathing in confusion. And Adrian realized the plan wasn't just to switch babies. It was to switch hearts, to make a mother doubt her own child, to make a husband doubt his wife, to make a rich man blame a maid. Because if the family tore itself apart, no one would notice who walked away holding the truth. And somewhere, hidden behind the hospital's clean walls, Evelyn Harrow was already moving her next piece into place. Adrian turned to Grant, voice low and firm. "We keep Marisol protected. We keep the babies locked down. And we start digging into Evelyn's past." Grant nodded. "How far back, sir?" Adrian's eyes narrowed. "All the way to the night I stopped remembering." Celeste's voice rose, trembling. "Adrian, what are you hiding from me?" Adrian looked at her, and for the first time he didn't see a socialite wife or a trophy or an image. He saw a mother, a woman who had nearly died, a woman holding 2 newborns who might already be caught in someone else's lie. He sat beside her, voice quiet. "I'm not hiding the truth anymore." He placed the photo on the bed. Celeste stared. Her breath hitched. "That's my mother," she whispered, recognizing the eyes. Adrian's throat tightened. "And that man beside her." Celeste's gaze lifted, confused and horrified. "He looks like you." Adrian let the silence answer. Celeste's fingers shook around the photo. "This is impossible." Marisol whispered. "It's not impossible. It's why my mother died." Celeste's head snapped toward Marisol. "What did you say?" Marisol's eyes filled with tears. "They said it was an accident, a hit and run, but my mother always said a rich woman threatened her." Celeste's face drained of color. "A rich woman?" Marisol swallowed. "Evelyn." Adrian's jaw clenched, and in that moment, Celeste's eyes shifted to Evelyn's reflection in the glass door, as if she could already see the betrayal waiting behind the next smile. Celeste whispered, "My aunt wouldn't." Adrian's voice was steady. "Your aunt already did." And as the babies cried, Adrian felt the first true countdown begin. Because once Evelyn realized her switch had been caught on camera, she wouldn't stop. She would escalate. She would erase evidence. She would erase people. And the first person she would try to erase was the one everyone already expected to blame. Marisol. Adrian looked at Marisol and spoke the sentence that changed everything. "You're not leaving my sight." Marisol blinked, terrified. "Sir." Adrian's eyes hardened. "Because this isn't over." And outside the suite, a knock hit the door hard enough to make Celeste jump. Grant's voice came through, urgent. "Sir, Evelyn just requested a family prayer in the hospital chapel wing. She listed you, Celeste, and the twins." Adrian's blood turned cold. Family prayer wasn't a blessing. It was access. It was a cover. It was the next move. Adrian stared at Celeste, then at the babies, then at the camera footage again, and he knew. If they went to that chapel, someone would come out with a different child. Or someone wouldn't come out at all. Adrian walked to the door, opened it, and looked Grant in the eye. "We're not going," Adrian said. Grant's face tightened. "Then she'll come here." Adrian's jaw set. "Let her." And deep inside, Adrian realized something he had never admitted before. He wasn't terrified of losing money. He was terrified of losing the chance to protect what mattered. Because for the first time in his life, the truth wasn't just data. It was a baby's breath, a mother's arms, a maid's tears, and a locket that refused to stay buried. Adrian didn't sleep. He sat in the dim corner of Celeste's private suite, watching the 2 bassinets the way a soldier watches a doorway. Every few minutes he replayed the same clip on his phone. The swap. The ring. Evelyn's hands. The simple, efficient theft dressed up as family. Celeste drifted in and out of medicated exhaustion, waking with a start whenever one baby cried, as if the sound might be the last proof that they still existed. And Marisol sat in a chair near the wall, hands folded so tightly her knuckles looked white, her eyes fixed on the babies with a quiet terror that felt older than tonight. Because Marisol knew something Adrian was only beginning to understand. When powerful people panic, They don't just lie, they erase. Near midnight, Grant returned with 2 guards and a face that had lost its color. "She's moving," Grant said. Adrian didn't ask who. He already knew. Grant continued, voice low. "Evelyn filed a formal complaint with hospital administration. She claims Marisol attempted to access the nursery and posed a threat. She's demanding Marisol be removed from the property." Marisol flinched, as if the words were a hand around her throat. Celeste's eyes opened halfway. "Removed," she murmured. "Like fired?" Grant shook his head. "No. Detained. Handed to police." Adrian's jaw clenched. "She's trying to isolate us." Grant hesitated. "Sir, there's more. Hospital legal counsel is already talking about restricting your private security. They say you're intimidating staff." Adrian let out a short, humorless breath. "Evelyn's fingerprints are on that too." He stood, straightened his shirt, and looked at Marisol. "From now on, you're not staff. You're protected witness." Marisol's voice trembled. "Sir, I don't want trouble." Adrian's eyes hardened. "You already have it. The only choice is whether it kills you quietly, or whether we drag it into the light." Celeste tried to sit up, wincing. "Adrian, please, don't make this worse." Adrian moved to her bedside, softer for a moment. "It will get worse either way," he said. "The question is whether we're ready when it does." Celeste stared at him with fear and a strange, dawning respect, because she was starting to see what Marisol had likely known from the beginning. Adrian Vale was not built for peace. He was built for war, and tonight someone had declared war on his children. Grant's earpiece crackled. He listened, then looked at Adrian. "Evelyn is in the chapel wing. She brought a private clergy team, and she's insisting you bring the twins for a blessing." Adrian's stomach tightened. A blessing. A prayer. A perfect excuse to get her hands near the babies again. A perfect excuse to move them under the cover of holy language and polite smiles. Adrian shook his head. "We're not going." Grant's brows tightened. "Then she'll come here." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Let her." He turned to the guards. "Double the corridor. No visitor gets within 10 feet of that door without my authorization." One guard nodded. "Yes, sir." Marisol swallowed. "What if she comes with police?" Adrian stared at her, calm in a way that scared even him. "Then we show the police the footage." Grant hesitated. "Sir, you haven't released the footage yet. You said you wanted to know why." Adrian's gaze was distant. "I still do." Then his eyes snapped back. "But Evelyn doesn't get another minute of uncertainty to operate in. She thrives in confusion." Celeste whispered, "So what do we do?" Adrian looked down at the babies, then at Marisol. "We force her to reveal her hand." He leaned toward Grant. "I want hospital surveillance from every hallway and service exit, every camera between maternity and the underground garage. I want it now. And I want to know where Tessa went after delivery." Grant nodded sharply. "On it." Adrian paced the suite, mind working like a machine. The ring, the swap, the masked figure, the unknown caller's threat, blame the maid. That caller wasn't random. It was coordinated. And coordinated crimes have one weak point. They require communication. Adrian pulled out his own security app and opened a quiet panel most people didn't know existed. He had installed signal scanners in the suite, designed to detect unauthorized wireless transmissions. It was an obsession, a habit, a sickness of control. Tonight it might be salvation. He watched the interface for a minute. Then it pinged. A new device connected briefly to the hospital's internal network. A hidden camera? A burner phone? Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Grant," he called. Grant returned immediately. "Sir," Adrian held up the screen. "Someone just pinged our suite from the hallway." "Track it." Grant's eyes widened. "We can triangulate?" Adrian nodded. "We can try." Grant moved quickly, stepping into the hallway, speaking into his earpiece. Marisol's breathing quickened. "Sir, what if it's her?" Adrian didn't answer, because a knock sounded at the door. Soft, polite, almost respectful. And that was worse than a bang, because Evelyn never banged. Evelyn entered rooms the way poison enters blood. Adrian gestured to the guards. They moved closer. Grant cracked the door without opening it fully. Yes, a hospital administrator stood there, flanked by 2 uniformed security officers. "Mr. Vale," the administrator said carefully, "we need to address a complaint regarding an unauthorized individual in this wing." Adrian's gaze was ice. "You mean my protected witness?" The administrator blinked. "Sir, we have a report that the maid—" Adrian cut him off. "Her name is Marisol Reyes." "Say it." The administrator's mouth tightened. "Marisol Reyes attempted to access the nursery and caused distress to staff." Marisol flinched. Celeste's face tightened with anger. "That's not true." Adrian stepped forward. "Do you know who filed the complaint?" The administrator hesitated. "A family member of Mrs. Vale, Miss Evelyn Harrow." Adrian exhaled slowly. "Of course." He leaned closer, voice controlled. "Tell Miss Harrow she is not authorized to make decisions for this suite." The administrator cleared his throat. "Sir, she's also claiming your private security presence is intimidating staff and violating hospital protocol." Adrian nodded, almost amused. "Then Miss Harrow is welcome to file a lawsuit." The administrator's tone sharpened. "Mr. Vale, we can call the police." Adrian's eyes didn't blink. "Call them." The administrator froze. Adrian continued. "Quieter, but sharper. And when they arrive, I'll show them hospital footage of Miss Harrow switching newborn identification bands with a nurse who vanished." The administrator's face drained. "That's a serious accusation." Adrian's voice was flat. "It's not an accusation. It's a recording." Silence pressed against the doorway. Then the administrator swallowed. "I'll speak with legal." "Do that," Adrian said. "And while you're at it, locate Nurse Tessa Baird." The administrator stepped back, shaken, and the door shut. Celeste stared at Adrian, breath trembling. "You just threatened to expose her." Adrian looked at her. "I threatened to expose the truth. Evelyn is the one who should be afraid." Celeste swallowed, rocking slightly with pain. "Adrian, why would she do this? She's my aunt. She raised me." Adrian's eyes flickered to the locket. "Sometimes the people who raise you do it to own you." Celeste's expression tightened, like the idea was too ugly to accept. Marisol spoke softly, almost to herself. "My mother used to say, rich people don't steal because they need. They steal because they can." Adrian looked at Marisol. "Your mother told you that?" Marisol nodded, tears gathering. "Before she died," Celeste's eyes snapped to her. "How did she die?" Marisol's throat moved. They said hit and run, no witnesses, no justice. Adrian felt something shift in his gut, a pattern forming, an old crime echoing into a new one. He opened his laptop and began cross-referencing names. Evelyn Harrow, Harold Pike, charitable foundations, care facilities, private clinics. Grant's team did the same. Money trails, paper trails, the quiet footprints of powerful people who thought no one would follow. A call came in from Grant's second in command. Grant listened, then turned to Adrian. "We found something. Hospital footage from the service exit." Adrian's muscles tightened. "Show me." Grant held up his tablet. Video played. Evelyn in a designer coat. Tessa in scrubs, moving fast. Evelyn holding a swaddled bundle. Adrian's blood went cold. "That's one of the babies." Grant shook his head slowly, eyes wide. "Sir, zoom." Adrian leaned in. The swaddled bundle's wristband flashed in the frame. It wasn't Baby Vale. It was a different name entirely. Half blurred but visible enough to sting. Adrian's breath caught. Grant whispered, "I don't think Evelyn stole one of yours." Celeste's voice rose, thin and terrified. What? Adrian's mind raced, pieces slamming into place. If Evelyn didn't steal one of the twins, then she did something worse. She brought another baby into the system. She planted a replacement. And the chaos of a twin birth was the perfect smokescreen. Celeste's lips trembled. You mean she added a baby? Adrian's voice turned deadly quiet. Yes, Marisol's hand flew to her mouth. Why would she? Adrian cut in. Because she needs control of the bloodline. Celeste stared at him, confused. Bloodline? Adrian's gaze went distant, as if staring into an older wound. Evelyn is obsessed with legacy, with inheritance, with shaping family like its clay. He looked at Marisol. Your mother. Did she ever say anything else? Anything about another child? Marisol's face crumpled. She used to cry and say, she had a baby before me. A boy. She called him Mateo. Adrian froze. Mateo. A name that sounded like a door opening in the dark. Celeste whispered, stunned. So Evelyn stole a baby before. Adrian's voice shook. She didn't just steal him. She kept him. Grant's eyes sharpened. Sir, if that's true, there will be financial records. Care facilities, private schooling. Guardianship. Adrian nodded slowly. And Evelyn's lawyer. Pike, Marisol whispered. He came after my mother died. He offered money so we'd stop asking questions. Adrian's jaw clenched. That's the thread. We pull it. Celeste looked down at the babies, eyes glassy. Adrian, if one baby isn't mine, then whose baby is he? Adrian didn't answer, because the answer was too dangerous to say out loud. If Evelyn had located Mateo, if she had raised him, if she had turned him into her obedient asset, then Evelyn could have used him to produce a child that carried Adrian's blood. A child Evelyn could insert into Adrian's family. A manufactured heir. An heir that didn't belong to Celeste, but would belong to Adrian. An heir Evelyn could control forever. Celeste's voice cracked. Adrian, are you saying Evelyn is trying to replace me? Adrian looked at her, grim. I'm saying she's trying to replace your motherhood. Celeste's face broke into sobs. My babies. Adrian stepped closer, steady. We protect them first. We keep them close. And we find Mateo. Grant's earpiece crackled again. He listened, then looked up, alarm in his eyes. Sir, we have a new problem. Adrian's stomach tightened. What? Grant swallowed. Evelyn is heading to the Harrow Care Estate. Celeste blinked. My mother's facility? Adrian's eyes narrowed. Why now? Grant's voice was tight. Because she knows you're closing in. She's going to secure the one person who can confirm the past. Celeste's breath hitched. My mother, Lillian. Adrian's jaw clenched. She's the witness Evelyn has kept sedated for years. Celeste shook her head, tears falling. My mother is sick. Adrian's voice was firm. Or she was made sick. Celeste stared at him, horrified by the implication. Adrian stood. We go. Now. Celeste flinched. I can't. I just gave birth. Adrian looked at her, torn for 1 second, then resolved. You stay with the babies under guard. Grant and I will go, and Marisol stays with you. Marisol stiffened. Sir, Adrian cut in, you're safest where I can monitor every doorway. Celeste grabbed Adrian's hand. If Evelyn gets to my mother. Adrian squeezed her fingers. She won't. He left the suite with Grant and a security detail, moving through the hospital like a man who had finally accepted the truth. He wasn't fighting a misunderstanding. He was fighting a woman who had been engineering lives for decades. At the Harrow Care Estate, everything looked peaceful from the outside. A manicured garden, soft lighting, a receptionist with a gentle smile. Inside, it felt like a place designed to keep people quiet. They moved fast, bypassing polite obstacles with a combination of authority and money. Adrian hated that it worked, but he used it anyway. They reached Lillian Harrow's room. Inside, A silver-haired woman sat by the window, staring at flowers as if the flowers were a television showing a life she couldn't enter. Celeste's eyes were in her face, but her posture was small, like someone who had learned to shrink to survive. Adrian spoke softly. "Mrs. Harrow." Lillian turned slowly, and her eyes widened as if she'd seen a ghost. "Arthur?" she whispered. Adrian stiffened. "My name is Adrian." Lillian shook her head, trembling. "No, you look like Arthur, you look like him." Grant frowned. "Arthur?" Adrian's pulse pounded. Celeste had told him her father's name was Arthur. So why was Lillian looking at Adrian like he was that man? Lillian's hand rose, stopping inches from Adrian's cheek, afraid to touch. "Evelyn said you were dead," she whispered. Adrian's blood turned cold. Who did she say was dead? Lillian's voice cracked. The man Camila loved. The man who promised he'd come back. Adrian's chest tightened. Grant leaned in. "Mrs. Harrow, do you know Camila Reyes?" Lillian's face crumpled. "Camila was my friend," she whispered. "My only real friend. Evelyn hated her." Adrian's voice went low. "Why?" Lillian's eyes filled with tears. "Because Camila told me the truth, that my sister wanted my life, my inheritance, my daughter." Adrian's stomach dropped. Evelyn hadn't just controlled Celeste. She had wanted to own her. Lillian's voice grew more frantic, as if a dam was breaking. "Evelyn kept me sedated. Told doctors I was unstable. Took my voice. Took my child from me." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Celeste was taken from you." Lillian nodded, sobbing. "Yes." Adrian pulled the locket from his pocket and held it up. Lillian stared at it as if it could burn her. "That's Camila's," she whispered. Adrian's voice shook. "What happened the day Camila gave birth?" Lillian began to cry harder. "Evelyn took the baby," she whispered. "She made me watch." Adrian felt a cold rage flood his veins. "Where did she take him?" Lillian's eyes darted. "Terrified," she said. "Overseas. A family. She said it would never ruin you. She said Camila was a disease." Grant's voice tightened. "The baby's name was Mateo." Lillian nodded weakly. "Yes." Adrian's heart hammered. "Is he alive?" Lillian stared out the window, trembling. "I don't know. But Evelyn visited someone every year. In secret. She called him my investment." Adrian's stomach twisted. "Investment. Not a child. An asset." Grant's phone buzzed. He checked it, then looked up, alarmed. "Sir, Evelyn is 2 minutes out. She's coming here." Adrian's blood went cold. They had pulled the past into the present, and now the past was running at them in designer heels. Adrian turned to Lillian. "You're coming with us." Lillian recoiled. "No, she'll hurt you." Adrian's eyes were steady. "She already has. We're done letting her." Grant signaled the security detail. They moved Lillian into a wheelchair. They rolled her down the hallway, staff staring, murmuring. And as they reached the exit, the front doors opened. Evelyn Harrow stepped in. Perfect coat, perfect hair, perfect smile. Her eyes locked onto Adrian, and that smile turned sharp. "Well," Evelyn said smoothly, "what a touching reunion." Adrian didn't flinch. "Move." Evelyn's gaze slid to Lillian, and something dark passed across her face. "Lillian, come back inside." "You're confused." Lillian trembled, shrinking in the wheelchair. Celeste's voice wasn't here, but Adrian could hear it in his memory, begging for her mother, begging for truth. Adrian stepped between Evelyn and Lillian. "Don't touch her." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "You're making a scene." Adrian's voice was ice. "You made a lifetime of scenes. I'm just recording this one." Evelyn tilted her head. "Recording? Of course. You think cameras make you God?" Adrian's jaw clenched. "No. They make you accountable." Evelyn leaned closer, voice dropping. "You want the truth? Fine. Here's the truth. I have your son." Adrian's heart stopped. Evelyn's eyes glittered. "And if you push me, you'll meet him for the first time at his funeral." Adrian stared at her, realizing this was no longer just a scandal. This was a hostage situation built on blood. Grant's hand hovered near his weapon. Evelyn smiled as if she could see the thought. "Try it," she whispered, "and I'll bury you with the story of the night you can't remember." Adrian's stomach turned. That night, the blackout. Evelyn was implying she controlled it too. Adrian didn't give her another second. He grabbed the wheelchair handles and pushed Lillian forward, past Evelyn into the sunlight. Security formed a wall. Evelyn's voice snapped, losing polish. "You can't take her." Adrian didn't look back. "Watch me." They got into the cars. And as they drove away, Adrian looked in the mirror and saw Evelyn standing in the doorway like a curse that refused to die. Back at the hospital wing, the second Dina test was ready. Adrian's lab, Adrian's courier, Adrian's chain. Celeste sat on the bed, trembling, holding both babies close as if her arms could keep reality from changing. Marisol stood nearby, pale, eyes fixed on Adrian's face. Adrian opened the envelope. He read the results once, then again. Then he felt his breath catch. Baby A was genetically related to Adrian Vale, not related to Celeste. Baby B was genetically related to Celeste Vale, not related to Adrian. The room went silent. Celeste's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the paper. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not." Adrian's voice went hoarse. They weren't twins. Celeste stared at the babies, horrified. "But I gave birth to 2. Adrian swallowed. You gave birth to 1. And someone placed another baby into that room to make it look like twins." Celeste's face crumpled into sobs. "So where is my baby?" That question cut through everything. Not reputation, not legacy, not scandal. A mother's missing child. Adrian's jaw tightened. "We're going to get your baby back." Marisol's voice broke. "And the other baby, the one that's yours." Adrian looked down at the infant who was his by blood but not Celeste's. The child was innocent, unaware that his existence was a crime's final signature. Adrian whispered. Sickened, Evelyn planted him. Celeste shook, tears falling. "Why?" Adrian's eyes turned cold. "Because she's building something. A bloodline she can control." Grant stepped closer. "Sir, we find Matteo. He's the key. If Evelyn has him, he's connected to this." Adrian nodded slowly. "And we find Tessa. She's the courier." Celeste looked at Adrian, eyes burning. "And my baby." Adrian met her gaze. "Yes, your baby first." And in the silence that followed, Adrian felt the trap tightening. Because now Evelyn knew she'd been seen. Now Evelyn knew Adrian had proof. Now Evelyn knew the babies couldn't be used quietly anymore. So Evelyn would do what she always did. When control slipped, she would strike. And somewhere in the hospital, behind the clean walls and quiet corridors, Celeste's missing child was already being moved like a secret package. Adrian's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A message appeared. "You chose the wrong truth. Now you'll pay." Adrian stared at it, then looked at Grant. "Lock every exit," Adrian said quietly. "We hunt the baby, and we hunt Evelyn's investment." Grant nodded. Grim. Understood. Celeste clutched the infants tighter, whispering like a vow. "Bring my baby back." Adrian's eyes hardened. He had built an empire watching strangers. Now he was going to use it to save his family, and the deeper he dug, the clearer it became. The babies weren't the beginning of Evelyn's crime. They were the final chapter of a story she'd been writing for decades. Adrian turned the private medical wing into a fortress overnight. He didn't do it with panic. He did it with precision. 2 guards at every elevator. 1 at every stairwell. Another at the service corridor that led to the underground garage. Every nurse who entered the wing had their badge scanned twice, once by hospital security and once by Adrian's men. Anyone who complained was quietly redirected to administration. Anyone who insisted was quietly removed. Because somewhere in the same building, Celeste's baby had been moved like contraband. and Adrian could feel it, the way a man feels a storm before the first drop hits. Evelyn wasn't running away. Evelyn was repositioning. She was buying time. She was deciding which lie would cost her the least. Celeste sat upright now, despite the pain, her eyes wide and furious, her arms wrapped around the 2 infants she still had, like she could keep the world from taking anything else if she just held tight enough. "Bring my baby back," she whispered again and again, not like a request, but like a spell. Marisol stood in the corner, silent, shaken, her eyes glossy with grief. Every now and then her gaze drifted to the infant whose DNA said Adrian was the father, but Celeste wasn't the mother. Marisol didn't touch him, didn't reach, didn't claim. But her expression carried an aching recognition, a baby inside a lie. Adrian's phone rang. Grant's voice came through, tight and fast. "Sir, we traced Tessa's movement. She didn't leave through the main exit. She used a staff-only corridor that connects to the chapel wing." Adrian's jaw clenched. "Of course she did," Grant continued. "There's a storage room behind the chapel. It's not on the public floor map. It's used for folding chairs and ceremony supplies. There's a camera there, but the feed was down for maintenance." Adrian's eyes turned cold. Nothing goes down during a crime unless someone paid for it. Celeste's voice cut through him like glass. "Are you saying my baby is in that chapel?" Adrian didn't soften the truth. "I'm saying that wing is where Evelyn asked for access, and where Tessa moved." Celeste tried to stand, wincing. Adrian stepped toward her. "You're not going." Celeste's eyes flashed. "That's my child." Adrian held her gaze. "Exactly. That's why. You're not going into a place Evelyn chose for you." He looked at Grant. "You go. Bring the baby back. Quietly. Fast. No mistakes." Grant hesitated. "Sir, if Evelyn is there..." Adrian's voice was flat. "Then you record her breathing." Grant moved. Minutes passed like hours. Celeste's hands shook as she held the 2 infants, kissing their foreheads, whispering apologies as if they could understand. Adrian paced. Marisol stared at the floor like she was afraid the tiles might open and swallow her. Then the door opened. Grant stepped in. His face was pale, but his arms were full. A 3rd swaddled infant, red-faced from crying, tiny fingers clenched like fists against the world. Celeste made a sound that wasn't a word. It was pure relief spilling out of her body. She reached, trembling, and when the baby was placed in her arms, she collapsed back onto the bed, sobbing. "My baby," she whispered. "My baby. I'm here. I'm here." Adrian felt his throat tighten in a way that surprised him, because for all his money and power, there was nothing more terrifying than a baby alone, and nothing more holy than a mother reclaiming her child. Celeste rocked the infant, pressing her lips to the tiny forehead, crying like she was washing poison out of her soul. Marisol covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks, as if the sight was healing and breaking her at the same time. Adrian looked at Grant. Where was she? Grant's voice was quiet. Storage room behind the chapel, hidden behind stacked chairs. Celeste's sob turned sharp. She hid my baby behind chairs? Grant nodded once. Yes. Adrian's eyes narrowed. And Evelyn? Grant hesitated. We didn't find her there, but we found evidence. A blanket that isn't hospital issued. A burner phone. And a note. He handed Adrian a small folded paper. Adrian opened it. One line, written in elegant script. You can't keep what you can't prove. Adrian's jaw clenched. Evelyn was telling him the game wasn't over. She was telling him she still believed she could win with doubt. Adrian folded the note slowly and slid it into his pocket like a promise. Celeste looked up through tears. Adrian, I want her arrested. Adrian nodded. She will be. Marisol's voice trembled. Sir, she'll blame me again. Adrian turned to Marisol, and for the first time his tone held something like respect. Not this time. He looked at Grant. "Bring me the footage." Grant nodded. Adrian's own hidden camera footage from the delivery suite was already saved. But Adrian knew something else. Evelyn would claim it was edited. Evelyn would claim it was misinterpreted. Evelyn would claim Adrian manipulated it to punish her. So Adrian needed more than one proof. He needed a chain of truth so tight it couldn't be cut. Grant returned with a drive containing hospital corridor footage. Adrian sat at his laptop and began stitching the story together like a prosecutor. Tessa leaving the delivery corridor. Evelyn entering a service stairwell. The swaddled bundle. The meeting at the underground garage. A grey-coated woman receiving the infant. Then the chapel wing. Then the storage room. Then Grant finding the baby. Adrian paused on one frame and zoomed. The grey-coated woman's face was partially visible in a reflection. Blonde hair, a medical mask. But her eyes were clear. It was Tessa again. She wasn't only a nurse. She was the runner. Grant leaned in. "Sir, we can send this to police." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Yes. But first, we remove Evelyn's ability to rewrite the story." Celeste frowned. "How?" Adrian looked at the DNA results on the table. One baby genetically Celeste's but not his. One baby genetically his but not Celeste's. 2 infants presented as twins. A planned lie. Adrian's voice was cold. "We do a second DNA test on all 3 babies, in front of an independent witness with sealed chain of custody, and we record the entire process." Grant nodded. "Understood." Celeste stared at Adrian, breath trembling. "And the baby who isn't mine." Adrian looked down at the infant sleeping, unaware he was evidence. "He's still a baby," Adrian said. "He didn't choose Evelyn." Celeste's eyes filled. "But he's not mine." Adrian didn't argue. He didn't romanticize. He didn't demand she feel something she wasn't ready to feel. He simply said, "We'll find his mother. And we'll find the truth of how he got here." Marisol's voice cracked. "Sir, what if his mother was forced?" Adrian's gaze turned hard. "Then we save her too, because Adrian was realizing something the cameras hadn't taught him. Some victims don't look like victims. Some wear scrubs. Some wear pearls. Some wear Maid uniforms." That afternoon, the police arrived with 2 detectives and a hospital legal representative. Evelyn had tried to delay them, but Adrian had bypassed delay with the only language the system respected. Evidence. He presented the footage, the timestamps, the reflections, the corridor recordings, the burner phone found behind the chapel, the note, the first tampered DNA chain of custody with a ghost signature, the second controlled DNA test proving the babies weren't biological twins. The detective watched the clip of Evelyn's hands switching wristbands and went still. "That's her face," he said. Adrian nodded. "Yes." Celeste sat upright, holding her baby girl now, eyes burning. "She did this to me." The detective looked at Celeste, then at the baby. "We'll issue a warrant." Adrian's phone buzzed at the same time. Unknown number again. One message. "You're too slow." Adrian's stomach tightened. He looked at Grant. "Matteo." Grant's eyes widened. "Sir." Adrian's voice went low. "Evelyn said she had my son. If she's losing control of the baby switch, she'll tighten control of Matteo." Celeste frowned, confused. "Matteo?" Marisol's face went pale. Adrian turned to Celeste. "There's more. Evelyn stole a baby years ago. A boy. Camila's baby." Celeste's breath hitched. "Camila, you're..." Adrian nodded once. "The woman I loved before you. The woman Marisol's mother. The woman Evelyn destroyed." Marisol whispered, trembling, "Matteo is my brother." Celeste stared, horrified. "Your aunt stole Adrian's son and kept him?" Adrian's voice was steady. "And now she may be using him to build a bloodline she controls." The detective frowned. "Mr. Vale, do you have proof of this, Matteo?" Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Not yet. But we will, because Adrian didn't just want Evelyn arrested. He wanted her exposed. He wanted every hidden thread pulled into daylight. That night, Adrian set a trap with scandal. He hated scandal. He hated noise. He hated the public eye. But he understood Evelyn. Evelyn moved fastest when she felt her reputation slipping. So Adrian let a controlled rumor leak through a cutout, not to mainstream media, to the kind of blogger who lived for whispers. Hospital breach. Vale heirs compromised. Evelyn Harrow under scrutiny. It was bait, and Evelyn swallowed it. At midnight, Adrian's private wing security system flagged an unauthorized badge at the corridor door. A nurse uniform moved through the camera's frame with practiced ease. Adrian watched from his phone. The figure stopped at the baby suite door, raised a hand, and in the hallway light, the eyes were unmistakable. Evelyn. She had dressed as staff. To sneak past guards. To reach the babies again. Adrian stepped into the hallway with Grant and 2 guards. His phone was recording. The lens pointed forward like a weapon that didn't fire bullets, only truth. Adrian spoke calmly. "Looking for something, Evelyn?" Evelyn froze, then turned slowly, smiling as if she'd been invited. "Adrian," she purred. "You're awake." Adrian didn't move. "You're trespassing." Evelyn's smile thinned. "We're family." Celeste appeared in the doorway behind Adrian, hair disheveled, face still pale, holding her baby girl close. The twin boys slept in bassinets behind her. Marisol stood near the wall like a shadow that refused to disappear. Celeste's voice shook with fury. "Where is my right to breathe in peace? You stole my baby." Evelyn sighed dramatically. "I protected you. You would have ruined everything." Celeste's eyes flashed. "You ruined me." Adrian held up his phone. "I have footage of you switching the wristbands." Evelyn's eyes flicked to the lens, then back to Adrian. "Footage can be edited." Adrian's voice was ice. "Not when there are multiple angles." Evelyn's smile turned sharp. "So you'll call the police and announce to the world that the great Adrian Vale couldn't protect his own children in a hospital room?" Adrian didn't blink. Yes. That answer surprised even Celeste. Evelyn's smile faltered. Because Evelyn had been counting on Adrian's pride. She had been counting on his fear of scandal. She had been counting on his obsession with control. And now, Adrian was showing her the one thing she couldn't manipulate. A man who no longer cared what breaking looked like. He cared only about stopping her. Evelyn's gaze slid to Marisol. "And you," she said softly, venom wrapped in velvet. "You shouldn't exist." Marisol flinched. Adrian's eyes darkened. "Say that again, Evelyn, for the recording." Evelyn's lips tightened. Adrian leaned in. "Where is Matteo?" Evelyn laughed quietly. "Matteo." The way she said the name confirmed everything. "You really don't remember," Evelyn whispered. "That's the saddest part. You were brilliant, and so easy to break." Adrian's voice rose slightly. "Where is he?" Evelyn's gaze sharpened. "If you keep digging, you'll meet him at his funeral." Celeste gasped. "What are you saying?" Evelyn straightened. "I'm saying stop." Adrian's jaw clenched. "You're threatening a man you stole." Evelyn's smile returned. "Cruel. I made him. He's mine." Grant's eyes narrowed. Adrian nodded at Grant. Grant tapped his earpiece once. Now, from a side corridor, 2 guards escorted a man into the hallway light. Mid-30s. Dark hair. Sharp cheekbones. Adrian's eyes. Adrian's jaw. A face that looked like Adrian's past walking into the present. Marisol's breath caught like her lungs forgot how to work. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Matteo." Matteo's eyes darted, confused, frightened. "Who are you?" Evelyn's expression changed. For the first time, her composure cracked. "Matteo," Evelyn said. voice suddenly sharp and commanding. "Come here." Matteo flinched, instinctive obedience tugging at him. Then he looked at Evelyn and hesitated like a man waking up mid-dream. Marisol stepped forward, tears falling. "I'm your sister." Matteo recoiled. "I don't have a sister." Adrian moved closer, voice low. "Yes, you do. And you have a father." Matteo stared at Adrian. Something flickered behind his eyes like recognition struggling to climb out of years of conditioning. Evelyn snapped. "Don't listen to him." Adrian didn't look away from Matteo. "She lied to you." Matteo's voice cracked. "Is it true?" Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Matteo." Matteo's voice rose, breaking. "Is it true?" Evelyn didn't answer. Because she couldn't. And silence was the loudest confession. Matteo's face crumpled, pain slicing through his confusion. "You said my mother abandoned me." Marisol shook her head, sobbing. "She never abandoned you." Adrian's throat tightened. "Camila never abandoned you." Evelyn's eyes flashed with rage. "Enough." Adrian stepped forward. "Tell us where the baby went." "Celeste's baby." Evelyn smiled, brittle. "Ask Matteo." He did the handoff. Celeste turned, horrified, to Matteo. "You took my baby?" Matteo shook, panicked. "I didn't know. I was told it was a medical emergency. She said the baby would die if I didn't move her to a specialist." Celeste's sob turned furious. "Where did you take her?" Matteo's breathing quickened. Underground garage. A woman in a grey coat. Blonde. She said she was a pediatric specialist. Grant's eyes narrowed. "Tessa." Matteo nodded, trembling. "Yes." Adrian's jaw clenched. "Where is the baby now?" Matteo shook his head, broken. "I don't know. They blindfolded me after." Celeste's face collapsed, terror and rage crashing together. Adrian stepped closer to Evelyn, voice shaking with restrained fury. "You orchestrated this." Evelyn's eyes glittered. "I saved this family." Adrian snapped. "You destroyed it." Evelyn lifted her chin. "Families aren't made by love, Adrian. They're made by control. I gave you an heir you couldn't lose." Celeste's voice shook. "My baby isn't a bargaining chip." Evelyn's smile turned cold. "In our world, everything is." Adrian's eyes burned. "Not anymore." He nodded at Grant again. Grant played a recording on his phone. Evelyn's voice filled the hallway, captured months ago in Adrian's mansion study, on a hidden device Evelyn never knew existed. "We'll replace Celeste's child. Adrian will never know. And if he does, we'll blame the maid." Evelyn went white. Celeste stared at the phone like it was a knife. "You plan to ruin Marisol?" Evelyn hissed, losing control. "That girl shouldn't exist." Adrian held his phone higher, voice deadly calm. "Say it again, Evelyn." Evelyn's eyes darted, trapped. Adrian pressed. "And now tell them what you did to my memory." Evelyn's face twisted with fury. "You abandoned Camilla." Adrian's voice shook. "I didn't." Evelyn spat the truth like venom. "Yes, you did. Because I made sure you did. I drugged your drink that night. I staged the fight. I put blood on your hands so you'd believe you were dangerous. I told Camila you'd kill her if she came near you." Silence detonated. Celeste's eyes widened with horror. You did that to him?" Matteo stared at Evelyn like he was seeing her for the first time. Marisol sobbed quietly, hands shaking. Adrian's fists clenched, knuckles white. That night, the blackout. The missing pieces. Evelyn had manufactured it, not to protect Celeste, not to protect family, but to sever Adrian from Camila, to steal Matteo, to shape the Harrow line like a throne. Adrian's voice went hoarse. "Where is Tessa?" Evelyn's smile returned, desperate. "You'll never find her." Adrian leaned in. "You already lost, Evelyn. You just haven't accepted it." Evelyn's breathing turned hard. Her eyes flicked toward the chapel wing. Adrian noticed. Because Evelyn always looked toward her exit before she spoke her lie. "You want your baby?" Evelyn hissed. "Check the chapel." Grant's eyes narrowed. We already did. Evelyn's smile faltered. Adrian stepped back, recording still on. Too late, he said. We already brought her back. For a fraction of a second, Evelyn's composure shattered into something ugly. Not grief, not remorse. Rage. Because the baby wasn't just a child to her. She was a chess piece that had been removed. Police arrived within minutes, this time with no chance for Evelyn to stall. Adrian handed them everything in one clean chain. Footage. Audio. The burner phone. The note. The Dina results. Witness statements. Mateo's testimony. Celeste's statement. Marisol's sworn account of being set up. Evelyn fought at first, screaming about defamation and money and the Harrow name. Then the detective asked one question that sliced through her. Miss Harrow, why did you call him your investment? Evelyn's eyes flicked to Mateo. And for a moment, something almost human appeared, then hardened into the true face of her obsession. I made him, she said coldly. He's mine. Mateo flinched like the words were chains tightening, and that was the moment he finally understood. He had never been loved, only owned. Marisol stood beside him, shaking, and held out her hand. Mateo stared at it like he'd never seen an offer without a condition. Slowly, he took it. Weeks later, the headlines came anyway. Adrian had feared headlines his entire life, because headlines turned private pain into public entertainment. But this time, he didn't run from them. Because the story wasn't Vale loses control. The story was Harrow socialite arrested in baby switch conspiracy. Evelyn's charity boards removed her. Her accounts were frozen pending investigation. Her attorney, Harold Pike, was charged for tampering, coercion, and obstruction. Tessa was found trying to flee with forged documents and a bag of cash. The cash trail led to private facilities Evelyn had funded for decades. Facilities where children could be hidden, reshaped, conditioned. Mateo had been one of them. He wasn't the only one. Evelyn's empire wasn't just built on money. It was built on stolen lives. In court, Adrian testified with facts and footage and timestamps. He didn't rage. He didn't perform. He simply laid the truth down like a coffin and let Evelyn face what she'd built. Celeste testified too, holding her baby girl outside the courthouse afterward, eyes tired but fierce. She didn't look like a socialite anymore. She looked like a mother who had survived something ancient and cruel. Marisol stood beside her, not in a uniform, but in a simple dress. Shoulders squared, eyes steady. The woman they tried to blame had become the woman who helped expose the truth. The moral reversal was complete, and Evelyn, who had worn power like perfume, now sat in a plain jumpsuit, stripped of every lever she once pulled. The judge sentenced her for kidnapping, conspiracy, fraud, unlawful confinement, and obstruction. But the real punishment was not the prison time. It was the restriction order. No contact with Celeste Vale. No contact with Lillian Harrow. No contact with Mateo Reyes. Mateo took Camila's surname. Not Harrow's. Not Evelyn's. When the judge said it out loud, Evelyn's face cracked, not with tears, but with fury. Because Evelyn didn't fear punishment. She feared irrelevance. Outside the courthouse, Adrian stood with Celeste and the 3 children, all safe, all breathing. The twin boys slept peacefully. The baby girl clung to Celeste's warmth, and the 4th infant, the one Evelyn had planted, slept too, innocent and unaware he had been used as a weapon. Celeste looked down at him and whispered, "What happens to him?" Adrian took a long breath. "He's not guilty." Celeste's eyes filled with conflict. "But he's not mine." Adrian didn't force her into forgiveness. He didn't demand a miracle. He simply said, "We will find his mother. If she's a victim, we help her. If she's complicit, Justice will find her too, and the child will still be protected. Celeste nodded slowly, tears falling. Then she touched the baby's cheek gently, like she was proving to herself she could still be human after what Evelyn tried to make her. "He deserves a chance," she whispered. Not as her weapon, as a child. Months later, the mansion on Crestview Hill was quieter. Not empty, healed, slowly and imperfectly. Lillian lived with them now, under real care, no sedation, no lies. Some days she remembered everything, some days she forgot her own name. But Celeste sat with her every day, rebuilding what Evelyn stole, one gentle moment at a time. Marisol no longer cleaned floors in silence. Adrian set up a trust in Camila's name. Marisol began studying social work, determined to protect other women from being erased the way her mother had been. Mateo attended therapy. Some days he was angry. Some days he was numb. Some days he held Marisol's hand and cried like the child he never got to be. And Adrian still installed cameras. But not because he trusted no one, because he understood the difference now between watching and living. One evening, Adrian stood in the nursery doorway and watched Celeste rock the children. The boys slept. The baby girl gurgled softly against her mother's chest. The fourth infant slept in a crib near the window, safe for the first time in his short life. Celeste looked up at Adrian, voice quiet. "Do you regret finding the truth?" Adrian thought of Camilla and the locket, of the years Mateo lost, of Celeste's baby crying alone behind chapel chairs, of Marisol's tears, of Lillian's drugged silence. He shook his head. "No," he said. "I regret not finding it sooner." Celeste's eyes shimmered. Adrian pulled the silver locket from his pocket and placed it in Celeste's palm. "Keep it," he said, "not because it belongs to the Harrows, but because it belongs to the woman whose love started this war and whose child survived it." Celeste curled her fingers around it gently. Marisol stepped into the room holding a framed photograph. A new one, a garden photo behind the mansion. Celeste with the children, Lillian faintly smiling in sunlight. Marisol beside Mateo. Adrian standing among them, not posed like a billionaire, but present like a man learning how to be a father. Finally, honestly. Marisol set the frame on the dresser and whispered, "My mother used to say some families are born, some are stolen, and some are rebuilt." Celeste whispered back, "We're rebuilding." Adrian looked at the sleeping children and thought about Evelyn, alone now behind bars, stripped of her influence, her money frozen, her name cracked in public. He didn't feel the cheap thrill of revenge. He felt something cleaner. Justice. Not loud. Not glamorous. Just true. And as night settled over the mansion, Adrian understood the final truth that no camera could capture. The richest thing he owned was never his company. It was the moment his children slept safely, and the lies could no longer reach them.